Welcome to Valuations and Succession Planning for Car Dealers, where two industry experts take a deep dive into the world of dealership valuations and the strategies that can drive growth and success. In this series, Dan Iosue, a succession planner with the Rawls Group, and Scott Womack, Senior Vice President of Mercer Capital, will cover a wide range of topics, including the fundamentals of valuations, industry trends, best practices, and common challenges faced by car dealers. Here we go.
It's a tough one. It's tough. A divorce, whether it's a marriage or a partnership, is not fun for anyone to navigate. Pretty often they're messy, regardless of planning and even intention, I would say. But I do know that from a succession planning standpoint, we're prioritizing the business and the ongoing success and continuity of the business, because without that, we don't really have much, or if anything, at the end of the day. And most of our clients want to perpetuate their legacies through their business and through the next generation. So we're working through that lens. And a big part of that is what happens in the event there's a divorce of any, of anyone involved, anyone in the current generation, next generation. Of course, if we're out, far enough ahead, there are, techniques involving, of course, prenuptial agreements, and certainly on the estate planning side, some things that can be, done in advance. But more often than not, the majority of time during our engagements, what we're working to do is establish very well constructed shareholders agreements and operating agreements that clearly define what happens in the event that that there's a divorce of partnership, a divorce of marriage, so that we're protecting and keeping the assets within the lineal family, no matter what. Now, the specifics of that, I think Scott can hopefully speak to some of what he's seen there on the messy side of things, because, if it's just a straight up ownership situation, I'm actually dealing with this now. We've got a ownership going to the next generation via a combination of purchase and gift and then purchase. And some of the things we've talked about and discussed is we've got updated shareholders agreements and operating agreements in place that will, as I just mentioned, protect the business stock and keep the business within lineal families should there be a divorce. From a value standpoint, there are some things, and again, we're not attorneys, but some techniques that we've helped facilitate and implemented in the past, where maybe we work through an irrevocable trust to ensure that we've got some divorce protection and creditor protection, early on in the process of gifting and transitioning ownership. In this particular circumstance, there isn't an appetite. They're not up for that. And it's, our perspective is, it has been clear that, we can protect and help protect through agreements business ownership, but the value of that stock is going to be, in a marital divorce, is going to be up for grabs or split, depending on the divorce circumstances and where they are and how that's done. So certainly tricky territory. I think on a partnership standpoint, we're talking about divorce of partnership. We can lean pretty heavily on agreements that preclude disagreements, as we like to say, with things that we discussed in prior episodes, very, very clear parameters for how a valuation is established, for terms of how partners are bought out. We prefer to see what we call for puts and calls, a way in and a way out for partners. Here's a way that we can take each other out should things not be working well. We're going to agree to that on the front end. And here's the way that I can get out if things aren't. I can put my stock and say, this isn't working out. I'd like to be bought out. And what does that look like? So really, it's getting clarity on the front end through agreements, that's what I've seen, work best and I'll just, Scott, I'm very interested in your perspective and experience on this from a valuation standpoint. What I have seen in marital divorce, I have seen that come back, with a number of clients as as something that's been contested, after the fact, after the settlement. I have seen valuations come back and get attacked really as being inaccurate. And that is that's a bit of a dice roll there as to how that's going to work out. So I think the more clarity and agreement you have on the front end, the better your probability of working that out on the back end. But Scott, I'd be very interested to know your experience there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Remind me, Dan, I want to jump on that at the tail end of what I'm going to say. Kendall, I think your question, what I would tell auto dealers is, trying to be informed in an uncomfortable process is probably the best mindset for this space. Divorces can be messy. One of the often overlooked, in prior episodes, we've talked about the unique nature of this industry. One of them being that, each operating dealership has to have a manufacturer approved what's called dealer principal. And that can have an impact in divorce cases. Typically, if one spouse owns the business and you value the business and you value the marital interest, typically most judges, most attorneys, when you get into equitable distribution of the marital estate, doesn't award, for instance, if husband and wife collectively own 100%, typically they don't stay in business. So it's not 50% here and there. But the idea that you have to be an approved dealer principal, so the non-business spouse can't just come in and say, I would want to run the business. And quite honestly, where I've seen this come to roost more is at the death of a shareholder. So in a previous episode, we talked about triggering events. Obviously, when a dealer principal passes away, the dealership has to be valued. But I had a client, the widower was like, oh, I'll just come in and run it. And obviously that was an issue because she had zero experience. A couple other things to think about in divorce, depending on the state. More states tend to be sort of current value. Some of the elements to think about, did a particular dealer principal own or have the dealership before marriage? So then you can get into separate or premarital value versus marital value. And again, states treat that differently in terms of, can something that was separate, can the appreciation or increase in value be marital? That's, sort of state specific. The other important criteria here is, most people inherently think about the operating dealership because it's generally has the most value or can have the most value. But more often than not, these dealers have a collection of related companies, right? So they'll have the operational dealership. They'll probably have the real estate, the sort of dirt facilities in another entity that would need to be valued for a divorce or any kind of litigation. As we talked in other episodes about diversification, more and more dealers have gotten into the reinsurance business, so they may have a reinsurance company as well. So in the context of a quote unquote messy divorce, oftentimes we've got to get a value of all of those. But those are just some things for dealers to think about in this process. But I think the key point being, try to be informed in an uncomfortable process.
This is only one out of our 12-episode series focused on dealership valuations and the strategies that can drive growth and success. Continue listening to the series now or come back for more. Each topic featured may want you to learn something new. Succession planning allows you to create more control over the future you envision by proactively addressing possible, probable, and potential issues impacting your goals. Do you have a question you want to discuss with an expert? Feel free to reach out directly to Dan or Scott at the email addresses listed on the screen. Valuations and succession planning for car dealers is a part of the Rawls Group's Advancing Your Business, People, and Legacy Conversation series.